I used to think I was ready. 26 years old, a steady job at an interior design firm in Seattle, a small apartment with a lake view, and a simple ring on my finger. People said I looked like I'd made it in life, and I believed them. He was calm, kind, the kind of man who holds doors open for anyone. I thought that meant respect. For months, we lived as if the world had paused just for the two of us. Sunday mornings meant coffee, long talks about kids and travel. He said our home so naturally it made me smile. When he proposed, it was in a park downtown, mid-afternoon. No production, no hidden photographer, just him on one knee and me, laughing nervously. I said yes without thinking twice. There was something pure in that simplicity. In the days that followed, I called my mom, my sister, told my coworkers. He called his mother. That was the first time I noticed how different he sounded when he talked to her. Long pauses, a soft tone, almost like he was asking permission to be happy. I thought it was sweet. Now looking back, I see how deeply it unsettled me. The first weeks were light. I imagined flowers, songs, little details. He said, "Whatever you decide is fine." Sometimes it annoyed me, but then I'd think, maybe he just wants me to be in control. What woman doesn't want that, right? One night, he came home from work and left his phone on the table. It rang. Her name flashed on the screen. He answered and stepped out onto the balcony. I could only hear the short replies. "Yes, sure, I'll ask her." When he came back, he looked tense. "My mom wants to know the theme for the ceremony," he said, trying to sound casual. I didn't understand why the rush. We hadn't even picked the venue yet. He smiled, hugged me from behind, and murmured, "She's just excited, that's all." I let it go. There were small signs, and I ignored every single one. At that time, I didn't want to be the difficult bride that the internet loves to mock. I started planning the wedding like someone starting a life project, with energy, with spreadsheets. At first, it was fun. My sister and I spent late nights researching vendors, decorators, photographers, but he never really seemed there. When I asked what he thought of the flowers, he said, "They're all beautiful." When I showed him a cake catalog, he replied, "Pick whichever you like, love." I smiled so I wouldn't seem needy, but inside I was already feeling that kind of loneliness no one admits to inside a relationship. His mother, on the other hand, seemed very interested. She called almost every day, asked about the menu, the venue, even the dress. Sometimes I heard her on the phone asking if the reception hall could fit her guest list. He laughed, said yes, and came back to the living room as if nothing had happened. "She just wants to help," he repeated, and I convinced myself of that too. I started sleeping less. Sometimes I stayed up past midnight browsing wedding sites, comparing prices, saving photos. Every unanswered text from him felt normal. After all, he worked a lot. One evening, we were sitting on the couch, and I asked if he could go over the guest list with me. He glanced at it, picked up his phone, and said, "Let me just check with Mom who she wants to invite." I just stared at him, frozen. Mom. The word sounded too childish for a man about to get married. I covered it with a short laugh and said we'd go over it later. He didn't notice my discomfort. We'd been planning an expensive trip for weeks. 4 days away, a small luxury cabin in the mountains, far from everything. He seemed excited when we left home. In the car, we talked about how good it would feel to have no schedules, no work. We arrived late in the afternoon. The place was beautiful, a lit fireplace, quiet, the peace of a small town. On the first day, we made coffee together, walked in the woods. I remember thinking, maybe now we can reconnect. And then, in the middle of the night, his phone rang. Her name flashed on the screen. He picked up immediately. "Mom, what is it?" Silence. Then her shaky voice on the other end. He went pale. "She says she's not feeling well." He stood up, already reaching for his jacket. "She needs me now. Says she's short of breath, that she's alone." I tried reasoning, any way I could. I said we were hours away, that we could ask someone to check on her. A friend of mine lived nearby. But he refused instantly, angry, as if I'd suggested something cruel. "She needs me, not strangers," he repeated. I tried again, but he was already grabbing the car keys. And then the phone buzzed again. Her voice on speaker, weak, almost a whisper. "Son, have you left yet? I don't think I can handle this alone." He hung up and looked at me like his mind was already made up. "I'm sorry, but we have to go." On the road, the silence between us was heavy. He drove too fast. I watched the speedometer, trying to hide my fear. I asked him to slow down, but he pretended not to hear. When we got there, the scene didn't match the desperate tone of the call. The house was quiet. She appeared in the living room, holding a glass of wine, watching an old movie. She smiled when she saw us, perfectly fine. "Son, I'm so glad you came. I'm feeling much better." She spoke casually. I tried to stay polite. "Even so, you should probably see a doctor, just to be sure." She waved it off with a small laugh. No need, dear. Probably just my blood pressure. It passed quickly. I tried calling to say you didn't need to come back, but the call must have failed. Bad signal on the road. When she went to the bathroom and left her phone on the couch, I picked it up. No record of any outgoing call. She'd lied. When she returned, she looked at me, holding her glass. But I truly appreciate your concern, both of you. So sweet of you to rush here in the middle of the night. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes bright with health. I looked at him, waiting for him to notice the obvious contradiction. But he just smiled, relieved. When I suggested we go back to the cabin, he shook his head. Better not. What if she feels sick again? I'd rather stay here with her. I tried to remind him about the reservation, the plans we'd made. But he'd already decided. Don't worry, love. We'll book another weekend. The cost of the trip fell on me. He never mentioned splitting it. And deep down, I knew it wasn't the money that hurt. It was knowing I'd never be able to compete with her. Days later, 3 speeding tickets arrived in the mail. All from that night. My sister said I was turning into a ghost. My mother only asked if I was eating properly. Neither of them knew the battle I was fighting. The following week, my mother-in-law sent an email, not a message, an email, with song suggestions for the ceremony, a list of appropriate altar colors, and a note saying, many brides overdo their makeup and regret it in the photos. I read it 3 times, took a deep breath, closed the laptop, and decided not to reply. The next Saturday, we went to see a wedding venue in a wooded area outside Tacoma. Beautiful, with a river view and a renovated barn. While I spoke to the manager, he was on his phone. It's my mom, he said, stepping out. When he came back, he said she thought the place was a bit too rustic. I smiled politely and asked if he liked it. He hesitated. She might have a point. It was always her. I drove back alone while he slept in the passenger seat. On the way, I wondered if love was supposed to be like this. Or maybe I was just convincing myself it was, so I wouldn't have to admit something was already breaking. It was during a dinner at their house that things began to shift. His mother appeared with a small blue velvet box, old and dusty. She said she had something very special for me. Inside was a lace veil, delicate but yellowed with age. She stroked it proudly and said it had belonged to her grandmother, that every woman in the family had worn it on their wedding day. Now it's your turn, she said, smiling. I looked at the fabric, touched the lace, and thanked her. I really tried to be polite. It wasn't the kind of situation where you can just say no. On the way home, I asked what he thought. My mom would be happy if you wore it. And you? He took a while to answer. I think it's nice to keep traditions. Days later, I went with my mom and sister to a bridal shop in Bellevue. Inside the fitting room, I felt like a little girl again. I tried on 5 dresses until I found the one that made me stop. Simple, light fabric. No glitter, no lace. When I looked in the mirror, my mom started crying. My sister smiled the kind of smile that doesn't need words. I took a picture and sent it to him. I wrote, I think I found mine. It took him about 20 minutes to reply. Pretty. I'll show my mom. The chill that ran through me wasn't joy. Later in the car, my mom said he seemed distant. When I got home, I saw his mother's name flashing on my phone. 4 missed calls. I answered on the 5th. She started without saying hello. Dear, the family veil doesn't match that modern dress. I tried to explain I could make adjustments, maybe wear it at another moment, but she cut me off. It's not negotiable. That veil belongs to the wives of our family. Our family. I was silent for a few seconds. I didn't have the energy to argue, so I said I'd think about it. He came home late that night, smiling as always, but there was discomfort in his eyes. You could try wearing the veil, love. She just wants to feel part of it. She's already too much a part of it. He sighed, tired, as if I were being unfair. That's when I realized how far apart we were, without ever admitting it. I still wanted it to work, and that's what hurt the most. I stared at the dress hanging in the closet, trying to imagine that heavy old veil on top. It was almost funny. All I wanted was a day that was mine. Update 1. At the end of the following week, she showed up unannounced. Rang the bell at 10 on a Saturday morning and walked in as if the apartment were hers. She brought the veil, carefully folded, said she wanted to see how it looked on me. As she spread the fabric across the couch, my body froze. She placed the veil on my head without asking, just tucked the pins into my hair and stepped back to admire her work. See? Now you look like a true bride of the family. I stared at the mirror, paralyzed. The fabric hung to my shoulders, thick and yellowed. He walked into the room right then, his smile tight, and said only, "Looks nice, Mom." Neither of them looked at me. That morning left a bitter taste I couldn't shake. After she left, I tried to talk to him, but he only repeated, "Don't start a fight, okay? She's just emotional." In the days that followed, the messages began, long texts on my phone full of suggestions for flowers, hairstyles, even shoe styles. She lived less than 20 minutes away, so she seemed to think it was normal to drop by unannounced. One afternoon, I came home and saw her car parked out front. She was sitting on the couch, drinking tea. I used the spare key. My son said it was fine. I smiled weakly, trying not to show anger. She started talking, and I only half heard the words: promise, tradition, respect for the family. Then suddenly she called me ungrateful. Quietly, but enough to cut deep. I asked calmly, "Are you calling me ungrateful because I don't want to wear your veil?" She laughed. The kind of laugh that has no humor, only contempt. "Dear, I just hope you know what you're destroying." He came home minutes later, and I thought, relieved, that finally someone would set boundaries. But when I explained what happened, he sighed, sat beside her and said, "Love, you take everything too seriously. We just want peace. That night, I lay facing away from him, a knot in my throat that wouldn't dissolve. I thought about going to my mom's house, but I didn't want to look like I was running away. I wanted to believe there was still something left to fix. The next morning, while he was getting ready for work, I asked if we could set boundaries. She can't come here without notice, and I don't want to talk about the veil anymore. You're overreacting. She's my mom. Drop it. The sound of the door closing was his only argument. In the following days, her messages turned sharper, more poisonous. She said I was trying to pull him away from his family, that a good wife respected tradition. I showed him. He read them and answered with the same indifference. She says a lot when she's upset. Don't pay attention. That was it. I asked for boundaries. He asked for peace. And his peace always cost my silence. One Tuesday night, I sat with him at the kitchen table. The apartment was silent. I can't do this anymore, really. It's not normal for your mother to come in uninvited, to talk to me like I'm a child. He stirred his coffee, unbearably calm. You're exaggerating. She only wants what's best. For who? He didn't answer. I need space. I need you to stand up for me. He gave a small laugh. Stand up to who? My own mother? We sat in silence. Then he stood up and walked to the bedroom. That night, we slept back to back. I woke around 4 a.m., staring at the ceiling, realizing how everything was quietly collapsing. The next day, I called my mom. She listened quietly, breathing deep, and said only, "Sweetheart, come home for a few days. Breathe away from all that." I refused immediately, but after hanging up, I looked around and realized the apartment felt like a hotel room. Impersonal, cold, full of things that no longer belonged to me. By the end of the week, I received another email from her. Long, full of accusations, passive-aggressive lines, and one sentence that made my blood run cold. "If you keep insisting, maybe you're not worthy of my son." I showed it to him. He read it and said, "You have to understand she's intense but harmless." Harmless. I almost laughed. 2 hours later, while I was still trying to process that, there was a loud knock on the door. It was her. Again. She said she wanted to settle things like adults. I was so exhausted that I let her in. She started quietly, but within seconds she was yelling. Said I was selfish, ungrateful, that I was stealing her son. When he arrived, straight from work, he walked in on the scene. And even then, he stood between us not to defend me, but to ask me to lower my voice. The woman was accusing me in my own home, and he was asking for calm. From that day on, I stopped arguing. I acted in silence. Started gathering documents, saving money, checking listings for smaller apartments in another neighborhood. I didn't know if I'd actually leave, but I needed to know that I could. Every night, I lay in bed pretending to sleep while he typed on his phone. I didn't need to see the name on the screen. I knew who it was. One Sunday night, while I was washing dishes, my mom called. "Sweetheart, this isn't normal. Don't wait for the worst to react." She was right. Only the worst was still waiting for its turn to arrive. Update 2. He asked me to meet after work at the cafe downtown, the same one where we'd celebrated our engagement. I went. When I arrived, he was already there. He ordered a black coffee, same as always, and looked at me in a way I didn't recognize. "My mother is suffering a lot because of you." The words hit like a punch. "She's suffering because I won't wear the veil?" He frowned, resting his elbow on the table. "It's not just the veil. It's the way you talk to her. You hurt her." I laughed. Not out of irony, but nerves. "Have you seen what she's been saying to me? She's impulsive, but you need to understand her side." I replied softly, "And my side? Will you ever understand mine?" He looked away, and in that instant, I knew. There was nothing left. No partnership, no love, no respect. Just a man chained to someone else's will. I stood to leave, but he grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt. "You're not walking out like that." I looked at him, unafraid. "Let go." He squeezed harder. People nearby started watching. I yanked my arm free and said, without shouting, "It's over." I left before he could say another word. In the parking lot, I saw the red mark on my wrist where he'd held me. Thin, but enough to remind me of the line he'd crossed. I went home, packed a suitcase, threw in what I could: clothes, documents, the box with the dress, called my sister. Come get me. She arrived in less than 20 minutes. That night, I slept at my parents' house. The next morning, at 9 a.m., I sat in a police station talking to a female officer. She listened without interrupting, taking calm notes as I described what had happened at the cafe. The grip, the tone in his voice, the weeks of disguised control. When I finished, she looked up and said, "You did the right thing coming here." I signed the report with trembling hands and requested a restraining order. Handed over copies of his mother's messages, saved in a folder I'd made the night before. When I got back to my parents' house, my sister was in the living room sorting papers. "The wedding contracts. Want me to help you call them?" I nodded. It took an entire day of cancellations, and every phone call felt like a release. At the venue, the manager was kind. He listened, offered to postpone, then suggested I use the space for something else. I thought for a moment and said, "A birthday party. That's what this is after all." "A rebirth," he smiled. The dress was last. I took it from the closet, still with the tag on, and stared at it. For a second, I imagined the scene that would never happen. Me walking down the aisle, the flowers, the guests. I picked up the phone and called an organization that donates dresses to women in need. "I'd like to donate mine." The woman on the line thanked me. In the days that followed, I changed passwords, blocked numbers, told the building concierge not to accept any visitors for me. His mother, of course, tried to reach out. Long messages, some begging, others insulting. I showed them to my lawyer and let her handle it. I didn't reply again. Sometimes I still caught myself staring at my phone, waiting for a message from him. Not for reconciliation, but for a sincere human apology. It never came. And over time, I realized it didn't matter anymore. Choosing where to go next was easy. My sister wanted the beach. I wanted silence. We ended up in a small coastal town in California, full of colorful houses and the smell of sea salt. On the flight, she slept on my shoulder, and I watched the clouds through the window, trying to understand when I'd started confusing love with obedience. We walked along the sand without talking much, letting the sun burn slowly into our skin. At night, we ate in small restaurants. For the first time in months, I slept 8 hours straight. Time passed. A year, maybe a little more. I moved cities, started a new job, rented a small apartment. I met someone by chance, a client's colleague, introduced at a cafe in Portland. He didn't talk much, and that comforted me. No games, no mystery. Just presence. He introduced me to his mother a few weeks later, a calm woman who welcomed me with a simple cake and asked if I preferred tea or coffee. A few days later, I was home on a Sunday afternoon when my phone buzzed. His number appeared on the screen. For a moment, I thought of deleting it without opening. The message said, "I miss you. I'd like to talk. No fighting. Just the two of us." I stared at those words for what felt like forever. My heart didn't race. I didn't tremble. I didn't feel anger. Just a quiet emptiness. I typed slowly, without erasing a thing. "You're already married. To your mother." I hit send and turned the phone face down. For a few minutes, I waited for a reply notification. It never came. Almost 2 years later. I didn't think about him anymore. But one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from an old friend. "Did you see what happened with him and the new girlfriend?" I replied, "No, not really curious." But she insisted, "It's bad." "How bad?" She sighed. "He started dating a woman who works at a nearby clinic. Single mom, has a little boy. They seemed good at first, but things went south." I stayed quiet, listening like someone watching a movie they've already seen. She went on, voice lower. "There was a huge fight. The mother-in-law went to their house, started yelling, calling the woman a whore. A gold digger, said she wanted a man to raise her kid. And the woman snapped. She hit her. Badly. The whole neighborhood heard and the police were called. For a moment, I couldn't react. Then came a strange feeling. Not joy, not pity. Seems like the cycle repeated itself, you know? His mom was hospitalized for a few days, and he disappeared again. Stopped going to work. No one knows where he is. She asked if I was okay. I said I was. But inside, my thoughts were running wild. He would never change because he never wanted to. And she, the mother, never would either. They just found new targets. I remembered the times I tried to talk to him, to explain how absurd it was to live between two worlds. I remembered how he said peace when what he meant was submission. And now another woman had walked into the same trap, believing love was enough to tame poison. Funny, huh? You left, rebuilt yourself. She stayed, and look what happened. I smiled faintly, without irony. It's not funny. It's sad. Because it could have been me. I rebuilt my life slowly. My relationship is going well. He really listens to me. His mother invites me to Sunday lunch, lends me recipes, asks about my mom, and for the first time, I realized a mother-in-law isn't something to fear. The other day, he looked at me and said, "You look happy." I answered, "I am. And the best part, I don't have to prove it to anyone." After the storm, the world went quiet, and so did I.